Welcome to Spotlight with Lisa. My name is Lisa Curcio. Today is Thursday, October 12th, 2017, and I always do that for those that are going to be watching this recording on YouTube. All right, here we go. Holiday catalog. I'm adjusting my screen so you guys can see. We are going to be using tonight, and I marked the page, hold on one second, the Night in Bethlehem bundle. This is the Stampin' Up! Holiday catalog. If you don't have a current Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you would like one of these and the annual catalog, I would be happy to send them to you complimentary. But we're going to use this bundle. So let me break that out. I've got the stamp set here, and I've got the coordinating framelits. And I've got a piece missing here because we're going to use it tonight. And I'm really excited to show you some of the things that I'm going to do with it. So I've got a demonstration for you tonight that uses a technique, as well as some other samples for you at the end. So make sure that you hang with me. Oh yeah, Susan said she loves the bundle. Yes, and Janet said the same thing. Yeah, this is a fabulous, fabulous bundle. Timeless, it's never going to go out of style. All right, we're going to start with a piece of Whisper White cardstock. This is 5.5 by 8.5. I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm a big fan of this bone folder. I find that gives me a really nice crisp crease. We're actually going to stick that over here to the side. We're going to do some stamping with that later. And I've brought in a small piece of watercolor paper. This measures, I got to check really quick. Yep, 2 by 2.5 inches. And we're going to actually do the technique portion on here. I'm going to start with Pacific Point. And I'm going to squeeze it. And we made these ink pads flexible so that you can squeeze ink into the lid of the pad, all right, which is what I've done here. So I just gave it a little squeeze while it was closed. And then I have my aqua painter. Aqua painter is nothing more than just a nice way of watercoloring without dipping a brush in a cup. So this unscrews, you put tap water down inside and screw that back on, and this allows you to eliminate that little cup that you would dip into when you watercolor, which you know what, that makes a mess, doesn't it? Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to want to get this paper wet so that we're able to do some of the technique that I want to show you. Now, no two of these are gonna look alike. So if it looks messy, it's meant to be messy, so just hang with me. I am going to squeeze this so that I can put water on the paper, and I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer so that you can see better. There we go. So you get a better option. Okay, there we go. I'm squeezing water and I'm running it around my paper. Okay, one thing about watercolor paper is it's very porous, so it's going to actually take a lot of the ink with no problem. It'll be able to be very, very absorbent. And do you see how I'm just dabbing color on? The great thing about this is you don't have to be an artist. Nope, and it doesn't require any skill. And like I said before, no two are going to look alike. So I'm literally picking up ink from inside the well and I'm just dabbing it on top of here. I put my silicone craft sheet underneath because I want to keep the paper clean and dry if I can, because I'm going to finish up the rest of my card. And one thing for sure is that water and paper really don't mix. So I'm just going to kind of work on here, and I'm going to have some lighter areas and some darker areas. So I'm just going to kind of fill this in. I'm going to add a second color, but in order to do that, this is going to have to be dry. And since we're all together, I don't want to waste your time, and I'll be quite honest with you, when I'm paper crafting, sometimes I'm just a tad impatient. Is anybody else like that? All right, I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to set that aside. Let me reach over for my rag. Okay, and I want to dry this off because I want to make sure that we don't have it not too many places. Now, you can see how dirty this is. I've got my Stampin' Scrub here right off camera. And I actually squeeze this till all the ink runs through those bristles until it's clean. Now keep in mind there's a dye in your ink pads. So the bristles are going to actually have some tint to them, which is normal. So don't let that bother you. The good way to check is to run it here. And if it doesn't run clean, then you know you got to do a little bit more rinsing. Oh, here's that watercolor paper. And we're going to speed up the process tonight with the heat tool. Now this is normally used for heat embossing, and if you don't know what heat embossing is, boy, you are missing out on something marvelous. It takes a powder and turns it into a raised foily or matte finish depending on what type of powder that you're using. Gives it almost a 3D look and texture. The Stampin' Up! Heat tool has two speeds. There's a 1 and a 2. One is if you just want a low speed to kind of heat up thin paper, maybe vellum. Two, you can be able to hear that, is a lot louder. So that's going to give us kind of full strength. Kind of think of a blow dryer on multiple settings. Watercolor paper will dry very, very quickly underneath the heat tool, and this is just going to speed things up for me. I will tell you that it's very, very hot, so you're going to want to keep your hands away from it. And then I'm going to flip it around because I don't want to burn myself, and we're going to do this side as well. All right. A lot of you also tell me, boy, oh boy, my paper always warps when I do that. So I want to show you something. Have you ever noticed that when you're doing this, the paper starts to curl? Turn it over, heat from the back as well. The heat will help straighten the paper out, just like it's doing here, so that you'll end up with something a little bit straighter that's easier for you to adhere when you go to do your card. Okay, I'm going to bring this back in. This is kind of like my little craft rag. It's always got ink on it. I'm going to check my little thing here. Yep, my brush looks clean. And now we're going to do our second coat. So I'm going to bring this piece back in, and this time, Emerald Envy. I know you're probably thinking, Emerald Envy, oh my gosh. Yeah, but wait till you see. We're going to squeeze this from the back side as well. Again, the lid is flexible, leaving a pool of ink. I don't want the green to overpower my blue, so I'm going to be careful about how I do this. And I'm not going to squeeze the water on the paper this time, because if I do, it's just going to puddle up what I already have here. So I'm going to squeeze a little bit of water into here, okay? And then I'm going to pick this up. I want to make sure I don't have too much, and I'm going to start dabbing. All right? You want to make sure the paper is dry before you go to the next color. Otherwise, you're just going to have nothing but a soupy mess. And I'm not being strategic about this because I don't want to cover the whole thing. And I find by dabbing preserves the bristles on my brush and allows for a real random look. Do you see up here at the top? Look. Do you see how this is looking more like water the way it's drying? All right, and you can just kind of fill it in where you want. So I'm going to do a little bit more down here. A little bit more here. And again, I don't want to lose that blue. All right. So I'm happy with that. I don't even mind if there's some areas here that are not completely covered, which means they're white. Now, someone's going to ask me, do you leave all that in there? Well, you know what? If you have a big soupy mess like this, you're going to take your rag and you're going to blot it. But since I have so much green in there, I'm actually going to use a paper towel and not this rag. And I'll do that when we're done. So I'm just going to set that aside. All right, so before we can go to the next step, we got to speed this up. So I'm going to dry that one more time, and I'm working on high. And you can see, look, it's like already dried on its own. That's the great thing about watercolor paper. You're going to notice too, the paper has a very bumpy surface. It's not even. So I'm going to go ahead and dry that. The other thing about the silicone craft sheet, you don't have to worry about burning this. This is actually even safe to use with your hot glue guns. I'm just watching my fingers is what I'm doing. All right, I'm just going to dry that off. Okay, I think that's good enough. I'm going to set that aside. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to do some die cutting. So I've got a piece of Whisper White cardstock here, and I want to use one of the dies from the Bethlehem set. This is from that same bundle of framelits that I just showed you a second ago. And these are actually called edgelit dies, and I think that's because of the reason they're meant to be cut on the edge. I never did understand what was the difference between edgelets and framelits. If somebody knows, give me a shout out. All right. Hi, Carol. Hi, Head of Lettuce. I see you there. Michelle's here. Maria's here. Mary Lou's here. Hi, June. Hi, Brooke. These die cut beautifully all by themselves, but I want to give you an extra tip tonight, and that involves this. This is a piece of regular kitchen parchment paper. You may have tried wax paper before, and I'm going to tell you that this works even better. And the reason is that wax paper can sometimes leave a residue on foil. So if you're doing glimmer paper or foil and you actually have this on top of here, let's say it's wax paper, and you die cut it, you'll notice that the wax paper will leave kind of like a waxy kind of finish on your foil. So try parchment paper. The Big Shot die brush is only going to be able to get into these little tiny areas, and it certainly does help, but I find that this works like a charm. So I'm going to take you over to the Big Shot, which is right over there. So we're going to go on a little bit of a field trip. There we go. All right, my mouth is going to be away from the mic just a little bit. Let's talk about this little sandwich I got going here in my Big Shot. I'm a big fan of the magnetic platform because it helps to hold my dies in place. Is it required? Absolutely not. You can use your multi-purpose platform and your thin die adapter. That will work fine. But I am also a huge fan of this precision-based plate, and you can see how much I've used it. And the reason is I find that this steel plate on top of this magnetic platform has a little bit firmer surface, I shouldn't say a little, actually a lot, to help me crank out these dies a lot easier, especially when they're detailed. So I use this with detailed dies. I get asked this a lot too. What's the difference between a detailed die and a regular die? Well, a detailed die, look, it has lots of detail in it, which means there's cutouts in the center as well as the circumference. A die that is just a silhouette will just have an outline shape with no details in the middle. The precision-based plate is going to work wonderfully when you've got a detailed die. So here I've got my cardstock. I'm going to add my little tip of the parchment paper right here, and I'm going to add my die. Now you're probably thinking, oh Lisa, you don't need the parchment paper, and you don't, but I'm going to tell you what, if you're like me and you're making this into 50 Christmas cards, you're going to thank me. All right, so we're going to crank this through, and you're going to hear all kinds of popping and cracking. That's all normal. And once it pops at the end, it allows me to crank it back towards me. I want to do it one more time. Every Big Shot is a little bit different. So you're going to find maybe yours works really good on one pass, and maybe you need two, there and back. Here's the other thing. How many of you have plates that look like this or even worse? So let me give you the next tip. It is so important, especially with your magnetic platform and your precision-based plate, that you are constantly rotating this. What's on the top then, at some time should be on the bottom. Which was forward should be backwards. And that's going to keep the curvature on your folders, or I'm sorry, on your clear mats down to a minimum. Because you don't want these to get so bowed that you don't have contact to your platform when you're trying to die cut. All right, so here we go. I always flip it over and I give it a good cursory look, and it looks good. We can use the Big Shot, the Big Shot die brush, but we don't have to, because watch. We are going to pull off the back end of the cardstock. Okay, that's the negative, and I'm sure we can come up with all kinds of wonderful things to do with this. Designer paper or foil behind here would be a gorgeous silhouette all on its own. But do you see how the parchment paper is here? All right, so I'm going to pull that away, and I'm going to give this a little bit of a wiggle. Now you want to be super, super, super careful. Here come my windows, so I'm just going to pop those right out. I don't care what anyone says, there's always a little tiny bit of poking required. But do you see what's happened here? Look how easy this was. So I'm going to come up underneath here and look. Out it comes, all one piece. Oh, I forgot these windows right here. But is that not like slick? Look how easy that is. Super, super easy. You don't have to scrub. You don't have to poke the whole thing out. And then here's your layer of parchment paper. I know one of you is going, no, save that. Because you know what? You can do pretty cool things with that. I know someone can. So there's your parchment paper. And then what we're going to do is going to bring the base of this card back in. And I'm going to actually adhere this to the bottom. So we're going to do white on white. Here's our die cut image, base of our card. I am actually going to use the multi-purpose liquid glue in order to adhere this. There's just too many small areas here to try to use snail adhesive, and I find this works really well. But I'll tell you what, I'm really challenged by this stuff, so I think maybe some of you are too. So I'm going to give you some tips. The least amount you squirt on, the better it's going to be. All right, well, we have just given up on the Facebook Live, so I am recording this right now in the stamp studio. I'm going to edit all this together so that you guys can see it. I am so sorry. In all the months I have been doing Facebook Live, it's been 13 months, I have never had this happen. And I'm assuming it's a Facebook technical problem, and I do want to apologize for that. But let's finish this card. All right, so I have adhered that die die cut shape down here. So I've got white on white. You can see that it's too long. So I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to use the edges of my paper as a guide. And I'm going to bring in my sticky scissors. I don't know about you, but I've got a pair of scissors in my stamp studio I dedicate specifically to these sticky jobs. I don't want to ruin up my good ones because I don't have to be cleaning them all the time, right? So I'm going to trim that away. And this is kind of dried while we were fussing with the video. All right, so now we've got the base of our card. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back in this piece of paper. Remember the one that we actually did the technique on? And beforehand, I die cut an additional one. So we have the one we did here, and I die cut one more, the exact same thing. And I'm actually going to adhere this to this watercolor piece as well. So we know we don't need the whole thing. So I'm actually going to turn this over, and I am going to put some of that same liquid glue on the back. Let me just clean that off. That tip dried while I was fighting with the camera. All right, here we go. A little tiny bit, and I'm using the tip to move the glue around. Remember, the one thing about the liquid glue is you don't want to go crazy with it. You want to make sure that you're using it in the thin areas so that it doesn't clump up and seep out the sides. There's nothing worse than sticky glue that shows, right? Okay, I'm going to recap that so we don't have that yucky tip again. And then here is our watercolor paper. The great thing about this is you can decide which one you want to be the top and which one you want to be the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead, I think I'm going to use that as my bottom. And I'm going to add this to my card. So I'm actually going to shimmy this over. And I'm going to press just to kind of put it in place. I'm going to flip it over onto my silicone craft sheet, and I'm going to rub from the back. All right, nice, firm, even pressure. And that's going to need a little bit of time to dry. So we're just going to pretend time-elapse photography that this is dry enough. I'm just going to be really, really careful, and I'm going to snip away the excess again, just like I did on the base of the card, using the edge of the paper as a guide. Let me unstick that, and same thing on this side here. All right, now we're going to put that aside. We're coming back to the base of the card, and I'm going to grab my dimensionals. And I am going to add one in each of the four corners. So here, here, and here. And then down in the center as well. I want to make sure that this panel is well balanced because it's going to be the focal point of my card. Take off those paper backings. And if you're having trouble, take your fingernail and press it in the center of the dimensional. That'll help lift the edges for you. It's easier too when it's laying down on your work surface. Now my last one here. Okay, so now I'm coming back to the base of the card, and I am going to actually mimic the exact same pattern, the very best that I can, and I'm going to cover it up with the colored panel. So there we go, making sure this is flush to the bottom, and then this is pressed over the top. So now I've got a really beautiful colored focal point, creating almost a 3D type image. Let's add the greeting. And you're going to notice too, since we blended those two color inks, we've actually come up with another shade. It looks really close to Bermuda Bay. So I'm using my Bermuda Bay ink pad and my words from the exact same stamp set. So this is Night in Bethlehem, remember. The great thing about this set is not only do you get the beautiful nostalgic images, but you get the greetings that can both be used on the inside and the outside of your cards. So I'm going to ink that up. I always check to make sure I didn't get too zealous. Do you see that right here? I pushed a little bit too hard. I don't know. I'm probably not the only one who's done that, right? So I'm just gentle tap. And then over here at the top. Now my head's pretty far. My camera's in the way, so I can't really tell if I'm straight, but I'm hoping for the best. Firm, even pressure, and then a lift. Just going to clean it off really quick on my scrub, close up my ink pad. I'll tell you what, I leave these open around where I'm working, and it's an accident waiting to happen. Last but not least, you know, in true Lisa fashion, we have got to add some bling. So I decided to do pearls because I didn't want to take away from this, but I wanted a little bit of extra texture around here. So I'm going to use the smaller pearls. So I've got one here, using my paper piercing tool to lift it because there's glue dots already on the back. That's how they come. Wonderful addition to make this nice and easy. So I've got one there, And I'm taking another one off of here, and I'm going to work over, you know what, let's do this way. I like to create an uneven pattern. So I'm going to do this one way down here, kind of in a triangle. I want my eye to flow with those, but isn't that pretty and so simple? A little bit of die cutting, and I'm really hoping that that tip I told you with the parchment paper is going to help you as well, especially when you've got to make a bunch of cards. All right, as I promised, I had other cards to show you. So let me pull those out real quick. Every month, I do what's called Studio Stamps in the Mail. Studio Stamps in the Mail is a way for you to stamp with me from home. I'm just going to slide this back in here and give you a quick little look at the other dies that are inside of here. The month of October, I'm including the stamp set and the coordinating framelits. So you'll get both of these. In addition to that, you're going to get free pre-cut supplies and a video and a PDF tutorial to make 8 cards. So everything that needs to be embossed is going to be embossed. If it needs to be die cut, it's going to be done ahead of time, with the exception of the die cut pieces that you can use in your framelits. So in other words, this image here, you're going to be able to die cut yourself from home so that you can actually stamp it first and get a beautiful silhouette of paper around that image. So all the embellishments are included as well. So you'll make 2 of these. You'll also make 2 of these, again, pre-cut supplies. Some of the designer papers are slightly different, but I've checked them all. They look absolutely beautiful. Look at that gold foil. And then 2 of these. Yes, of course, I include the metallic thread, the ribbons, and of course, those foil snowflakes. Aren't those beautiful? And finally, 2 of these. So for a total of 8 cards. And yes, the glitter is included in your packet. So you'll get the stamps, the framelits, pre-cut supplies to make 8 cards, a video for you to stamp right along with me from home. The best part is you can start and stop the video as often as you'd like so that you can work at your own pace. If you don't want to make all 8 now, you don't have to. If you want to make them all in assembly line, you can. I'll talk you through the whole thing, and the best thing is I give you a ton of tips along the way, making it easy for you to follow. For those of you that like written instructions, I also have a PDF tutorial with multiple pictures of each card, a great reference for you to use in the future as well. Copy the layouts, use them on other cards as well. Now, the ordering date for Studio Stamps in the Mail ends this Sunday, which is October 15th. I promise a mail date by October 21st. It's $62. That includes all the product. And just to give you a point of reference, if you were to add shipping, handling, and tax for the bundle, it comes out to just under $56. I think it's like $55.91. And then all I did was add $6.50 for priority shipping to get it to your house with the pre-cut supply, so everything will come together. I email you the tutorial and the video link as soon as it's paid, so you'll be all ready to go when the envelope arrives. Now, there's something else that's offered with Studio Stamps in the Mail as an added bonus, and that is Live with Lisa. Unlike tonight, we do a live event where I do numerous live demonstrations. There's an additional bundle of tutorials, and I give away product prizes in what I call Prize Patrol. So everyone who purchased Studio Stamps in the Mail is entered to win those prizes. Now, if you're not on Facebook, that's not a problem, because you know what? I still send you the video recording of the event. You still receive the tutorials via email, and your name is still in the product prize patrol, so nobody is left out. The other way to get into that live event, called Live with Lisa, is simply by placing a $25 product order. You can do that in my online store. If you use the host code, those extra rewards are all included, and that's clearly put on my page for you. My sincere apologies for the technical problems with Facebook tonight. And just as a reminder, that's the first time in 13 months that's ever happened to me. And I'm totally bummed because I love nothing more than actually being here and seeing you type and reply. It's just like you're here with me. So again, we're going to give Facebook a little forgiveness for that, and we will continue to work on the technical issues with the camera orientation at our end. So I promise next time I'm here with you, it'll be perfect. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. I do look forward to seeing you next time, and I hope you have a great night.